All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for the next edition of our webinar series. Today we are talking about ENFIN expansion, and welcome to the Golden State. ENFIN is now expanding into the state of California, so let's jump into the agenda and go over ENFIN. So we're going to talk about who is ENFIN, the available markets for ENFIN, the product offerings, how to access ENFIN in Aurora, how to successfully build an ENFIN proposal. Then we'll go over some FAQs and things we've learned after our launch in Florida. So who is ENFIN? Our partnership with ENFIN is essential to expansion with our TPO products, and ENFIN's mission is to empower residential solar installers to grow customers to take control of their home energy costs with affordable financing. So ENFIN is very technology focused. They have a streamlined, customer focused and technology enabled experience for partners and customers. And ENFIN is the first in-house financing option backed by an industry leading manufacturer. They own Q-Cells, or Q-Cells own them, but Q-Cells and ENFIN are one in the same. So let's talk about market availability. Florida was the initial market for ENFIN TPO products. We are now expanding into California. Southern California Edison is the only utility that's opening today, May 21st. Now, as the weeks come, more utilities in California will open. Sales reps that get onboarded into ENFIN's portal will need to complete a short module to fully activate their account. And again, as we open up this today, at the time of this webinar, the only utility that is open is Southern California Edison. But other utilities in the state will open over the course of the next coming weeks and month. But look out for email communications as those utilities open. SCE is the one to start. So let's talk about ENFIN's TPO program from an underwriting perspective. There is a 1-year savings requirement and a minimum FICO score of 600. They do a title check, and like all of our finance partners, at credit, it is a soft pull. But at the second milestone, that will turn into a hard pull. In terms of underwriting criteria, it must be primary residence only. If the property is a multi-unit, the applicant must either own the roof or have HOA approval. The residence must be permanently affixed to the ground. And ENFIN's system size allotment is 3.5 kilowatts to 30 kilowatts. The electrical offset must adhere to local utility requirements, which we'll discuss later in this process. And again, as we open up California, Southern California Edison SCE is the first utility we're going to work with. So how do you go about creating a lead for ENFIN? ENFIN is going to follow the same leads process you would use to launch Aurora. So ENFIN's platform is built into our Aurora instance. So you will start at the leads dashboard and generate a lead for the state of California in this instance, for a Southern California Edison project. Then you would do a new Aurora proposal. Again, this is fully built into our Aurora proposal builder. You're going to follow the same steps that you would when building a cash or mosaic deal. When we get to that stage of the presentation, we'll show you how to choose ENFIN as your option and the best practices for creating an ENFIN project. Now, I'm going to stress this throughout this presentation: accuracy, accuracy, accuracy above all. Make sure the pin is located at the correct property before you begin the proposal. But also, before you begin the proposal, make sure that the name, the address, the email address, the phone number, all of the key details for your project is accurate before creating that proposal. ENFIN, we want accuracy above all, so you don't have to go through the process of making changes for an ENFIN proposal. And we have a slide dedicated to that later in the presentation, but I want to stress this now. Make sure that whatever's on title is how you're putting it in the name, that the address is correct, the phone number and email address is correct, so that we can create an efficient process and you don't have to go back and make changes. So let's talk about accessing ENFIN in Aurora. One of the key things you need to know about accessing ENFIN in Aurora is that we're going to base everything on an expert design. So we need you to get in the habit of requesting an expert design when using ENFIN. The expert design is the design that ENFIN will use when doing the final review of the project. So when you get to the site model stage, click that expert design, request that. You'll get an email notification once that expert design is done, and then you can start the process of building. So let's talk about ENFIN and Q-cells. Because ENFIN is owned by Q-cells, we're going to use those panels for ENFIN projects. So when you're at the design stage, you'll use the Q-cell panel that's available, and there is no panel adder for using Q-cell panels for ENFIN projects. Now, what are some of ENFIN's design policies? ENFIN allows most north-facing roof planes as long as it meets the minimum yield requirements. One thing you do need to note when you're designing ENFIN, though, is you cannot have island panels. Each plane will need to have more than one panel per roof plane, no singles. So if you get a design back, make sure that you have multiple panels on a plane so that there's no change order required later. No singles. Now, how do you go about pricing an ENFIN project? When you go to the pricing page, you're going to follow the same process. You do not use the net price per watt tool in ENFIN. This is a TPO product, so the pricing will be calculated and the EPC will be calculated when you choose ENFIN as the finance product. Using the pricing page, you will also still build your adders into that project prior to selecting your TPO. You still want to make sure that if you have multiple planes, like an EV charger, or you're using Enphase. And additionally, when you're back at the design page, there is an inverter tool now built into the design page. When you choose an inverter, if you're Solar Edge, you'll leave it as Solar Edge. If you're choosing Enphase, it will automatically turn the Enphase adder on this page. But for all ENFIN projects, you must choose your inverter during the design process. All right, so let's talk about choosing your finance product. After you've built in your adder costs, you'll choose financing as if you were choosing Mosaic Cash, but now there's an option for ENFIN. If you're fully onboarded and you have all of your access to their products, choosing ENFIN and then the select product dropdown will show you the different TPO products that are available to you for that market. So you'll see the different escalators, you choose one of those, and that will reveal the monthly payment and show you what the solar rate is. You'll have solar rate options, the estimated monthly payment, and what the EPC for that project is. So again, once you choose your product and escalator, you'll choose a solar rate. Your net PPW can be determined by clicking the exit to CRM screen. Now, this is a point that I want to make throughout this process. The EPC and the solar math will explain to you how to do it, but because this is built into Aurora, you can choose the exit to CRM button prior to presenting a price to the homeowner to get a breakdown of what your net PPW would be for that project after subtracting your adders from the gross price. If you choose that exit to CRM button to get a breakdown of what your net PPW is, you still have to return to that proposal, run credit, get the document signed, and complete the welcome call. But you can use that exit to CRM tool after choosing a price and EPC to get an idea of what your net PPW will be after adders are removed. So let's go over that again. Remember, with ENFIN, the adders in no way affect the gross system price. They're not built into the cost. The gross system price is based on the rate, the escalators, and the sun hours. With ENFIN, adders reduce the net PPW. So with a Mosaic loan, you set a net PPW with the tool, you check the project adders, and then you choose a financing product, right? ENFIN, like all of our TPO partners, works in reverse, right? You choose your project adders, then you will choose an ENFIN product, and then you choose the cost per kilowatt hour to determine the monthly payment. Adders are subtracted from that gross price. And again, after you've chosen a monthly payment option, you can use the exit to CRM tool to see a breakdown of that PPW after adders, but then make sure you return to the project to run credit, to sign the papers, and then get the welcome call done. All right, so let's talk about ENFIN's credit requirements. The ENFIN credit application will be accessed through Aurora on the financing screen. Again, they use a soft credit check system like all of our finance partners. And I'm going to stress this, that's why it's bolded here. For ENFIN projects, the spelling of the name, email address, phone number must be correct. Incorrect or misspelled info will result in having to run a new application depending on which stage of the project you're at. Changes in the ENFIN platform are manual and could cause delays if you have to have your homeowner call and cancel out a project. So we are trying to stress this with our sales rep. For the sake of saving yourself time, Make sure that everything is correct from the start. It'll save you time, energy, and you won't have to duplicate the process or have your homeowner take extra steps that you as the rep could have resolved at the beginning of that process. When ENFIN checks the FICO score, it will show up as an inquiry from ENFIN with the date of the inquiry. ENFIN submits a soft credit request from the Bureau when determining credit eligibility. If the customer moves forward, there will be a hard credit request at the second milestone. Your credit will expire 30 days after the application if the agreement is not signed. You should inform the customers about this. And for signed agreements, credit approval and project cancellation may occur if final disbursement hasn't happened within 180 days of that credit pull date. Typically not an issue, but we're just letting you know. As far as property eligibility goes, your residence again must be permanently affixed to the ground, and the customer must be listed on the property's title. Now, what do you do if there's a proof of identity stipulation? Although rare, identity checks can arise when ENFIN is unable to validate the customer through their credit approval process and their integrated databases. So in the instance, they may receive a stipulation that they need to upload identification. The customer or installer can upload proof of identity to be reviewed. You can still submit your projects while you're waiting for these stipulations to be resolved. This is an example of the email that the homeowner would receive, where they can then take a picture of their driver's license, passport, or resident card and get that uploaded to their portal so it can be reviewed and that proof of identity stipulation can be resolved. Some key points to remember: ENFIN does not place a lien on the home. They do a UCC1 and county fixture. It's paid for by ENFIN, and those are both public records. If the customer sells their home, they have the following options. They can transfer the agreement to the purchaser of the home. They can purchase the system after 5 years, or they can prepay the agreement and transfer only the use of the system to the new homeowner. Once the agreement is complete, the homeowner has the following options. ENFIN will come in and remove the system at no cost to the customer, or they can upgrade to a new system with the latest solar tech under a new contract, or they can purchase the system from ENFIN for its fair market value. Unless the customer chooses not to renew, it'll be renewed automatically month to month. ENFIN allows for cancellation up to 7 days after all parties complete signing the contract. It's the law that sales must be done in the same language as the signed contract. Since ENFIN's contracts are only in English, it requires sales reps to communicate in English with their customers. All reps with an active HIS license in California, that info has been sent for their account to be created. If you don't receive an invite, reach out to your dealer onboarding specialist to get that resolved. And remember, there will be a learning curve for all parties. When this product launches, you'll need to work through these processes. That's what this webinar is for, to go over some of the key points and frequently asked questions. And then we've turned on the Q&A at this point in the presentation. We've got folks from ENFIN here with us today, and we are going to go over all of your questions and get those answered as this product launches for SCE. So, like all of our finance partners, you have to complete the welcome call. You should do that with the primary customer within 2 hours of signing the agreement. ENFIN is going to make up to 3 attempts to reach the primary customer within 3 business days after the agreement is signed. The best practice here is to get it done while you're in the home with the homeowner. They have to get this touch point resolved in order for the application to move forward. We're all used to welcome calls. Best practice, get it done while you're there. So let's talk about some frequently asked questions and some of the things we've learned since opening this in the Florida market. So when should the homeowner expect their first invoice, and what is the invoice due date? The homeowner can expect the first invoice to arrive within 30 days from the time the system is placed in service. That invoice will be due on the 1-month anniversary of the start date. So like other TPO partners, if they set up their ACH, they will receive a discount. Homeowners receive a $10 a month discount on their monthly payment if they set up the ACH withdrawals. That discount is already built into the proposal. So customers can sign up for the ACH discount when they sign their contract or at a later date once the system is operational. But again, when you're quoting this, that $10 is already baked in, assuming they're going to do ACH. Does the homeowner qualify for the solar ITC? Well, since the solar system is owned by ENFIN, any tax or renewable energy credits are property of ENFIN. Does the homeowner have to be on title to proceed? The customer must be listed on the title, so please confirm property ownership before proceeding with an application. The customer must be the owner of the property, no LLCs or nonprofits. What is the required credit score to get approved? Applicants must have a credit score of 600 or higher to get approved for ENFIN. Does ENFIN insure the solar system under a levelized TPO? Yes, ENFIN insures the system through the life of the contract term. However, the homeowner should carry insurance covering damage to the home, including damage resulting from the solar system and not due to the gross negligence of ENFIN. Can homeowners change their monthly due date? No, the date will be determined based on the permission to operate date. So let's talk about change orders and changes to the original agreement. So there are 3 phases we're going to cover here. We talked about accuracy throughout this entire presentation. So if there is a customer name, email, or phone number change, if it's prior to the credit application, update it in Aurora. If you've sent the docs but they're not signed, you need to cancel the project, update, and resend documents. Now, what we mean by cancel project is the homeowner must call and cancel with ENFIN. If the documents have already been signed, same process. The homeowner must call and cancel ENFIN, and then you have to re-sign. So if you don't want to have your customer have to call and cancel, make sure the name, email, and phone number and the address are correct before sending or signing docs. Now, if there's a change to the KWH rate or escalator and it's prior to credit, update it in Aurora. If the docs are sent, you got to cancel the project, update, and resend docs. Same deal. Docs signed, it's going to require a change order after the fact. Now, if there's a change to the layout, module type, inverter type, module count, battery quantity, or type, if it's prior to the application, you will fix that in Aurora. If the documents are sent but not signed, cancel project, update, and resend docs. If it's post document signed, you will have a change order. Okay, so we are at the Q&A stage of this presentation as we open up the California market to Southern California Edison. Again, we'll have more utilities down the road, but as of right now, it is only SCE. We have folks from ENFIN here that have joined us, as well as Rob Angel and Brian Malott. You should have been, if you have had questions, make sure you've been submitting them to the Q&A, which popped up about midway through this presentation, and let's get to those Q&A questions now. All right, y'all. So we have the Q&A open. We are starting to approve some of these questions. If you have questions related specifically to the ENFIN process, shoot those over. Arturo, I did see your messages pop through. What I would suggest, if you need specific help with ENFIN, shoot us a message over to producteducation@freedomforever.com, and we'll set up some time to go over some of your questions with you, okay? All right, so our first question is from Daryl, and it is there a lease option? So we have Matt from ENFIN here. Matt, you want to take that one?
Yeah, certainly. So in California, we currently have a PPA. This summer, we're targeting sometime second half of July to launch a lease in the state. So that'll cover utilities like LEDWP, Anaheim, for instance, also where a lease is required. But as of the launch time here, we're all PPA market in California.
Okay, so we did go over the credit information in the presentation, but since we have you guys on, I'm wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the, like the credit requirements or specific things about credit with ENFIN for that 600 range and above. So if we'll give you the floor and you can hopefully clear up some of the questions we're getting in bulk about credit.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the questions are. Every financer is going to have their own kind of secret sauce or their own variables, if you will, of how they're going to approve a borrower. So every financer is going to look at things like BKs, late payments. They're going to look at different bureaus. They're going to have different ratios. It's unfortunately not a credit policy that we have externally facing, and not one that even I have very detailed insight into. So if you're getting specific declines or you're seeing a pattern that you want to have us take a closer look at, I'd suggest maybe sending over some homeowner names of the ones where you've got questions. We also, please know that we can't really share details about a consumer's credit with anyone besides that consumer. But we might be able to kind of point you in the direction of trends if we've got a large enough sample where it wouldn't violate any of the reporting laws.
Thank you so much. So we have some questions about which credit bureau does ENFIN use. Can you guys give some detail about how the credit process goes through the credit bureaus? Is it all three? Does it hit one? Is it cascading? Do you guys have any insight on how the credit process works through the bureaus?
Sorry, I was going to let Priscilla take this one. Priscilla, if you can.
Yeah, sure, I'll take this one. So we typically use TransUnion as a credit Bureau. However, if there are any discrepancies or issues, we will run the application through other two.
Thanks, Priscilla. I appreciate that. So, Rob, I'm going to shoot this one over to you. Why pick ENFIN over a Sunrun or an Everbright?
Yeah, great question. Morning, everyone. Yeah, so I think the biggest reason is what you would expect, which is pricing. I think all other things being equal, generally you are going to see some pretty substantially improved pricing for or with ENFIN over some of the other options that we have in the state. So, I would suggest feel free to go in, game some different scenarios, see how it looks to you. You guys can make the call from your side at the end of the day, but that's what we are seeing on our end. So that I think is the biggest reason. Kind of a secondary reason is really the process. This is a very similar process to what everyone's used to in Aurora, as you've been selling, kind of loan and cash deals to date. So, it's a very smooth and streamlined process and kind of integrates into everything we have going with what we refer to as PG Lite. So I think that would be the second, primary reason to use it. It's a much smoother process.
Favorite question? How can we get a recording of this great training? Thank you for calling it great. I agree. It was great. I'm the one that recorded it. Sorry. We are going to send out a recap later this afternoon. They'll have an email recap, a link to resources that we have, the Sales Resource Center, and a recording of everything you hear today. Right? So look for that. And also, anytime we do one of these webinars, it does get added to the video library in Lightspeed under the video library tab. So jump down to the video library. You can gain access to all of our webinars, not just this, but any other one that we've done over the last 2 years. Look for the recap later this afternoon, and we will also have some resources available to you directly in Lightspeed. Great question. All right. So we have a question about cosigners. Can we do cosigners that are not on title? Can you all, folks from ENFIN, give us some insight on the cosigner process?
Yeah, certainly. So essentially the requirements for title are that the borrower has to be on title. The co-borrower does not have to be on title. So you have to have one that passes credit and one that's on title. Those do not need to be the same party, and they don't have to be related to one another. We do have systems in place to make sure that we're not going to see the same co-borrower pop up over and over and over on a bunch of people's applications. So effectively, you're looking at one borrower one time in the ENFIN universe. So if we've already got someone who's a co-borrower in one project, they're going to be DQ'd to be a co-borrower in the next one. There's a manual workaround for that. Let's just use edge cases here and say that 2 kids, both had their homes, wanted to get solar, both failed credit, both wanted their parents to be their co-borrowers. That's something that we could look at, and as long as credit's there, we can manually override it. But in general, the system's looking for one on title, one to pass credit, and not to have duplicate files with the same borrowers.
Thanks, y'all. So in our Q&A, we are getting a lot of questions about batteries, how batteries will work in the state, self-consumption, and Powerwall. I wanted to shoot that over to Rob and the folks from ENFIN. Can you give some insight on how batteries will work in the state?
Yeah, I can take that one. Matt, maybe you can jump in with anything I miss. So yes, you can sell both backup and non-backup batteries. What you'll do, it's the same process that you're used to in Aurora. So you'll add the battery that you want on the storage page. You'll choose the configuration that you want, either backup or self-consumption. And that essentially will pass that information to ENFIN. And so when you get pricing returned, that pricing will be for that product that you've selected, for that storage option that you've selected. So if you choose backup or non-backup with ENFIN, the pricing is essentially the same. In other words, battery pricing is the same whether it's non-backup or backup, but it is different than the PV only pricing. So you do get an increase to the EPC if you do add a battery, but when you get pricing returned, you'll get the pricing for the configuration that you've built in Aurora. So make sure that when you do add the battery, you're doing it on the storage page. Again, to the point that Mark made earlier, The adders don't really have any impact on pricing with ENFIN from a gross PPW standpoint. So it's super important that you do select it on the storage page and not just, for example, add the adder on the adders page. That's not going to pass through to them. So add it on the storage page. That'll give you the right pricing. And then, of course, that'll produce the right contract when you go ahead and progress. We will have, by the way, just a note on this, we will have an updated adder sheet. And for the dealers that have access, we'll have a new CBATS coming out shortly. That'll have all the information about ENFIN in California, including modules that are available with the pricing. Mark already mentioned it is going to be the Q-Cells 410 with no adder. We'll have the baselines, of course, on the CBATS, and then we'll have the battery options that are available with ENFIN, which it's basically going to be more or less the same as Florida. It's all batteries are going to be available, including the Powerwall 3, which is nice.
Thanks, Rob. The question is from Mike. Does Freedom or Sales initiate change orders if docs have been signed? Who wants that one?
I can take. Do we have anybody from? Okay, nobody from the AM team on here, so I can take that one. So, first of all, I do want to take the opportunity to guide you all to the changes help guide that we have in the Sales Resource Center. That is, I think we'll send a link to that we'll make sure that there's a link to that in the recap email that we send. We are going to update the version that is currently in there today with some new information after some changes that just occurred yesterday and some new information that we have. But that document breaks down a ton of information about in what situation you need a change order versus cancel and re-sign the agreement. In different scenarios, what is the fix you have to do? Do you have to, call in to get it canceled? Can you cancel in the portal? Does it just need a change order? All of that. So there's a ton of information about those sorts of changes. In this specific question, who initiates a change order? The answer is it depends. It depends on why the change order is being prompted and at what point. Sales, of course, can't always initiate a change order. Typically you're going to do that one of two ways. And by the way, all of this information is broken down in the document I just mentioned. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, it's fine. You can read it later there. But a sales rep typically will prompt a change order one of two ways. They will either kind of deny the scope of work that was presented and request changes, or actually there's three ways, or you could open up a ticket in Lightspeed and say, hey, I want to make a change. Here's what I want. And do this, and hopefully we can understand what you're asking for and do it for you, and then send a change order and present a new scope of work. Or you can always utilize the live scope of work feature in Team as well, where you chat into Sales Concierge, say, hey, I want to get on a live scope of work call, and then somebody from the Freedom Live Scope of Work team will call you within typically about 30 or so minutes. So all of those are ways that sales reps can initiate a change order. There are times where the Freedom team would prompt a change order if, for example, we go to build your project after site audit and we find that we can't build what you proposed, either because it's out of production tolerance or we can't fit all the modules or whatever the case may be. In those situations, we typically would present it in one of two ways. We'd either do what we call a contingent scope of work, where we say, hey, here's the scope of work. We can move this forward, but it's contingent upon you approving it and the homeowner signing this change order. Or we would move that project into holding and say, hey, listen, we can't build it as you sold it. You have a couple options on what to do. Pick the one you want, and then we'll go ahead and send the change order out. So I know there's a lot there. There's many different ways that those things could happen, but that's generally a breakdown of how that process would work. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Rob. Next question is from T. This is directed more towards the ENFIN folks about support. Is the support stack in place to call? How are you guys handling hold times, and if there's calls to make changes?
Sure, I'll take that one. As of right now, our hold time is less than 1 minute. We do have our general line that we've equipped with tools and access to be able to help with the heavy volume. So it's a lot quicker to get a response and also a greater scale of support from the general line.
Thank you so much. Send that one off. And are homeowners allowed to use IN numbers? I know we kind of addressed that in our side chat. If you guys could provide some clarity on the TIN numbers.
So yeah, we should differentiate here between a TIN, a tax ID number, which is really for a business, versus an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number. That's more like a social security number. So we do allow for ITINs in place of a social number. We do not allow for a business TIN. So we'll finance properties that are held by an individual, and on a manual review, we will finance properties that are held by a family trust. We will not finance any property that's held by a business, whether it's for profit or nonprofit.
Thanks so much.
Anytime.
For mounting type, are ground mounts or shade structures allowed, or is this strictly roof mounted for ENFIN?
Ground mounts are allowed, and it's pretty difficult to delineate between a shade structure and a ground mount, I guess. So in the fringe there, but yeah, I'd say we don't have something that I've personally seen. I will double check on this and make sure there's not an update that would preclude it, but I haven't seen anything that specifically would preclude a shade structure.
Question from T. When selling the home, if the new homeowner doesn't qualify credit-wise, is there a credit exemption fee? That would probably be for ENFIN folks. I'll jump on that one.
I don't know of any kind of a credit exemption fee. Typically, we're looking at either transferring to the new buyer, them qualifying for credit, or paying the system off, buying the system out if it's a time of sale after the 5th anniversary. Priscilla, I'm not sure if you might know some more than I do.
No, I think we share the same knowledge, but I can take that back and double check.
We've seen this question a couple times in our Q&A. I'm sure if you guys have already addressed it, I apologize, but is DTI considered into the credit approval?
Good news on this
Yes.
front. Wait, for TPO, we're not looking at income. We're not collecting income. So we can double check that, Priscilla, but I know on the loan business, it's a different answer. On the TPO side, we don't have any income steps out there.
Correct. For the loan, yes. For TPO, no. That's correct.
So we'll probably archive a bunch of these questions because we've gotten a lot of them. Can you all talk about the policy on re-roofing, like how it is? Are those typically allowed if they fit within the savings requirements? Discuss like the whole being able to do re-roofs, avoided cost of power, et cetera, for ENFIN.
Yeah, certainly. So typically you are going to be working with an avoided cost of power principle here, and it's going to make a full re-roof difficult in many situations. We don't have a particular stance on it other than that. We also don't have a space in the homeowner agreement where a re-roof is going to show up, nor do we have any roadmap where that is part of a homeowner agreement. So if it's required, if it's a re-roof underneath the modules, if it's a full re-roof, whatever the requirement is, if you can make it fit into the system with the financing, stay within the ACP rules, we don't have any guideline that says otherwise specifically. But at the same time, we also don't have any way for that to be articulated, if you will, to the homeowner on the homeowner agreement.
Mark, one piece on the avoided cost of power that I just want to chime in with, Matt. I think this is kind of in line with what we were talking about yesterday. I do think it is a valuable note. So keep in mind that the test that ENFIN typically is doing is actually ensuring kind of some year one, and Matt, please correct me anywhere I misspeak here, but is ensuring that there's year one savings for the homeowner from really a dollar perspective. And so it's not strictly ACP as I understand it, at least. We had an example that we were looking at yesterday where, again, for example, the customer's avoided cost was something like 40 cents, but the system would only allow us to price up to 21 or 22 cents. And I just want to explain why that might be in California. Keep in mind, we are working under NEM 3 or the net billing tariff. This particular system that we had built was only about a 50% offset, which meant that Aurora behind the scenes is looking at how much is going to get exported to the utility grid. And we didn't have a battery on this example, by the way. So it was looking at how much is going to get exported to the grid. And of course, it factors in the cost of producing that power versus the credit that you're going to get for that power, depending on the time of day, time of year, et cetera. And so that is factored into this as well. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, I guess the main takeaway here is it's not just looking at your avoided cost rate and allowing you to sell up to that rate. It is looking holistically at what is your pre-solar bill, what is your post-solar bill, with solar, with battery or not, and determining, okay, is there savings or is there not, and then giving you rates that would essentially allow savings. Matt, can you gut check that, make sure that was all accurate?
Yeah, Rob, that was perfect. The only thing I would add to that is that we do waive the avoided cost of power requirement when the home is and when the system is going to generate backup power. So if it's purely going to be a grid tie arbitrage system, then we have the year one savings requirement, as you described there correctly, for the avoided cost of power. If you select backup, which the method for selecting backup currently is in Aurora, when you're on the battery section, you would put the slider on something north of 0% for backup reserve. That's telling us we're going to receive that proposal, that design down the road, and that's telling us that that system is supposed to have backup power because you've now shown the homeowner that there's going to be a backup reserve on the system. Once you put that slider above 0 to show there is some backup reserve, that will remove the avoided cost of power requirement because the homeowner is going to have what is very certainly a more expensive install than if they were just doing a grid tie system. And they're going to have different value that comes with that. So it's not just about offsetting power from the grid. Now it becomes energy security at the same time. So does that make sense for you guys as well?
Appreciate that response. We've received a few questions in the Q&A about if you could go over a little bit more on the warranty and details, and are batteries included in that process? Like, what's the warranty situation on batteries, and what does ENFIN cover?
Yeah, so we have a 25-year O&M, 25-year production guarantee, and that includes all the components on the system.
And so, Matt, to be more specific here, and I think get to the question that they're really asking that we get quite a bit is, so, typically, as we know, we have a 25-year system. Typically, the modules are warranted, at least have a kind of linear performance guarantee for 25 years. Most of the components are 25 years. So I think the question is on batteries specifically that typically have a shelf life of 10 to maybe 15 years. If and when one of those fails, is ENFIN going to replace that free of charge? I think is the real question that they're getting at here. And is there a limit to how many batteries you guys would cover? And, we can get back to everybody here if you don't have an answer, but that's generally one of the questions that we get.
Yeah, let me dig in the exact details here so I can get that for you guys. So I'll get back to you with full details on that.
Gotcha. Now, question from Ernest: is this allowed for second or third systems, or is it primary residence single system only?
Currently, we're looking at primary residence single system only.
Okay. We are getting some questions in the Q&A about the welcome call. Can you guys go over what's covered on the welcome call, if you have those resources?
I could take that. So during the welcome call, we go over the specs of the installation at the homeowner's rear. We verify their name and identification at the beginning of the call. We also ask questions about if they've ever had solar before, and are they aware of the terms.
Thank you so much. We do have some time left for some additional questions. So if you have anything specific to the ENFIN process in California, shoot those over. Again, if there are any questions that have gone unanswered, you can always shoot us an email. We can take a lot of questions offline at producteducation@freedomforever.com. And we will again send out a recording of this later this afternoon with some additional resources. The next question that we have is from Sebastian, and that is after the 5th year. So this is pertaining mostly to like buying out after the 5th year. Can you all discuss like the options for homeowners after that 5th year? And we went over some of it in the process, but I'm sure it just need to be reiterated.
Yeah, certainly. So there is a buyout option at the 5th anniversary of the system. I don't know exactly for how long that window is open, but it's not open indefinitely. After that window were to close, then the remaining buyout option is essentially a time of sale. Now, obviously, at any point in time, a consumer could choose to just prepay the balance of their future payments, but that's not exactly the same as a buyout. So we're looking at at the 5th anniversary, and then after the 5th anniversary, just at the time of a home sale.
All right, so we have some questions about credentials. So anyone with an active HIS, those are being imported in the system. If you don't receive any ENFIN information into your inbox, you will contact your dealer for onboarding, find out the status of that. Rob, does that sound right? That's what we kind of covered in the presentation as well. How is the onboarding process going for the SCE in California?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, let's touch on that for a sec, Matt. Keep me honest here, but yes, we late last week pulled a list of every single rep in our system that was active and that has an active home improvement salesperson's license for California. We sent that list over to ENFIN, to Matt specifically. Matt has looked at that list, and we've essentially broken that list up into like 3 or 4 different groups. The main group being great, it's a new email, we can get them onboarded. And then we have a couple of different buckets of people that, have a duplicate account. And depending on the situation, there's going to be some follow-ups that we need to go through there. But I think the list of duplicates is, of the total list we sent, which was, I think, in the probably close to 1,500, 2,000, give or take. There was only maybe less than 200 that had some sort of duplicate, and less than 100 that we're not going to be able to onboard without kind of having some other conversation about it. So I think generally the answer is pretty much everybody that has an active HIS in Freedom System should expect to get logins. We expect by the end of the day today. There might be some that, for whatever reason, if it takes a little bit longer, spill into tomorrow, but more than likely today. And then there's this very small group of people that and you probably know who you are, if you already have an ENFIN account with another installer for whatever reason, you won't get access today. We need to figure out exactly what the plan is for you, but that's a pretty small group. The vast majority of people will get logins today, worst case tomorrow. So keep an eye out. And again, there's nothing you need to really do other than complete that small video in ENFIN if you haven't done that already, and then you'll be able to get pricing returned in Aurora. What I would say is that for anybody looking to use ENFIN, make sure that you run a test in Aurora before you get to a customer's house. Just kind of make sure you have it, make sure it works before you go and try to pitch it. It's always a good idea to just kind of make sure everything works the way you would expect it to. So build an example project, choose your pricing, choose your financing on the pricing screen, and make sure that you get pricing back. If you get pricing back there where it lists the different rates and the EPCs, then you're good to go.
And Rob, the only thing that I'd want to revise on that is from today into just over the next 24 hours, just to give a little bit more of a buffer. So you're right, we are going to break these up into tranches and do some updates and some uploads here. We're going to get cracking on that today. But just to set the expectation, I think everyone should be getting pinged for the most part within the next 24 hours, unless they fall into that category of the duplicate that exists in ENFIN. We've got to figure out exactly how to proceed.
Terrific. Just one other thing I would add is please do not, and I know this is hard in certain instances, especially if I have maybe an appointment today and you're eager, but please don't call the Freedom, or text the concierge team or email into the Freedom dealer admin team to kind of try to expedite that. Like, that's not going to work, first of all. And second of all, it's just going to kind of create more noise and more communication and kind of bog down the rest of those channels. So we're working on it. It's in Matt and ENFIN's hands to get those logins created. Please, if you don't have a login, just be patient. Wait till maybe midday tomorrow before you start reaching out to us. If by closer to the latter half of tomorrow you don't have an account, and you should have one because you have an active HIS license, then maybe you can start to reach out to us. But again, to Matt's point, give us a solid 24 hours before you come knocking on our door, or else it's just going to slow everything else down.
Okay, everyone, we have reached the end of our Q&A in terms of questions that are related to ENFIN. We do want to thank everyone that joined us for the Q&A session. If you have a question that you need additional answers for, we will obviously answer all of those at Product Education at freedomforever.com. Look for the recap as it comes out later this afternoon and resources associated with that. And just remember, this is open for SCE only to start. And as new utilities open up for ENFIN, we will release that information out in email. So look for emails as new utilities open up in ENFIN in California. Thank you so much for, Rob, Brian, Priscilla, Matt, Michael. Thank you for being here. As always, we really appreciate having you to answer the questions for our audience, and look for the next invite for our webinar series, which should be for this upcoming Tuesday, a week from today. So look for an invite later, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.